Savvy Scribes, and welcome to another episode. Today I have Antonette Montalvo. She is the founder and author of Visionary Nurse at visionarynurse.com, the owner, Antonette Montalvo Consulting and Coaching Services. She is the co-founder of Montalvo International Community Health Initiative, and she's part of the faculty of nursing at Lander University in South Carolina. Welcome to the Savvy Scribe Podcast, a podcast for healthcare professionals who want to build a profitable writing business. I'm Janine Kalbach, your host, and I am a mom to 2 boys. I'm a wife, a Great Dane lover, a registered nurse, and a content writing business owner. I am committed to help you moving your business forward because I've been there. I get it. I understand that life is busy and distracting, but many of us are burnt out at the bedside, working too many hours, and are ready for a change. Every week, I will deliver actionable advice and thought leaders in the industry to help you move along in your business. Welcome to the show. Do you guys love what you're hearing? Why don't you join me in our group on Facebook? It's a closed group for those that have to answer questions and get in, but it's the Savvy Scribe Collective over on Facebook. You can visit our website, www.thesavvyscribepodcast.com, to also get a link. See you in the collective. Well, and I think a lot of people don't realize when you do jump in and you try something new, most of the time, I mean, I know in nursing we have that nurses eat their young, but most of the time people are helpful. People want to help you grow. And my husband and I, but mostly my husband, started a real estate business this past summer, and we flipped a house, meaning he really flipped the house. I helped with paperwork and stuff, and visited the house and brought the guys lunch and stuff like that.
You do what you do best.
Yeah, right? I don't want to do that. But it's amazing to me how helpful people are, because you would think, if there's a cheap house in the area to flip, that everybody would be on it and everybody wants it. No, it's like, okay, well, we got it. But everybody's like, oh, good job, good job. And what do you need? Hey, I know this guy that does this. Do you need this and this? And I'm like, holy cow, these people are so helpful. Mm-hmm. But it's the same thing on the other side of it. I feel like with nurses and anyone who's in the writing field, I'm always like, why don't you try and go here and try this and try that and meet her and do this? And it's just, I don't know. I guess it's the heart of watching someone grow. It's really, really inspirational from someone who's built themselves up to look back and go, I want to help this person. Or, you get a conversation, you're like, I really like them. I am going to help them out. That I think it's definitely something to put into a skill set, is always be the helper. Once you are there, come back and help someone else do the same thing.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's at the heart of nursing at its finest in my mind, is just that advocate and that relational piece, right? It's why we end up, again, being the most trusted profession, is because, especially at the foundation of business, and what I've recognized, especially within networking, is that people want authenticity. People want you to have some level of integrity about what you're doing. And you might have to be a little bit more aggressive than maybe you're used to in certain situations, but also too, at the heart of it, people want to see that you're relatable. And when you make that kind of investment up front, it makes it a lot easier to get to where you need to go. And I've recognized that, in many different ways.
Well, and I think that's probably one of the things that people have said about me in the past, is that you're so real. I'm like, well, yeah, like honestly, right now I'm in a hoodie and some yoga pants and slippers, drinking coffee. That's how life is today.
Yes, it is.
20 degrees and it is cold. Like, that's life. And I think that, the more we are like that with each other, even in the, you see it throughout communities. Like, I feel like, parents, we've had this long-standing social media thing of, my kid is almost better than your kid, or look at what I can do and look what you can't do. And I think it's turning around a little bit. The pendulum swinging to, my kid's not doing this, just like your kid's not, but your kid will catch up. But my kid just did this, and yours will be all right. More, or, on the other side of it, like, I see it in the labor and delivery world, the breastfeeding thing. Everybody wants to breastfeed, but you feel like mom shamed if you can't do it. And I think people are saying, like, it's okay. you fed your baby, right? Things are
Yeah,
good. Like the baby ate. And yeah, I see that a lot of people like to relate to each other, the authenticity and the trustworthiness, like that we can help each other and help the communities grow.
absolutely. Yeah, I think that's the essence of all of it. And I think it's a lot of even how I've approached when I was more active as a clinician, how I approached care, right? Even though I might have answers to questions, a lot of it was really looking at how can I collaborate with the person that I'm tending to. I don't want to go in with a prejudgment of saying, well, this is why you're like this, and this, but it's saying what's going on in your environment that's driving this. What's going on in your environment that I might be able to kind of come alongside you and help you get to where you need to go. And yeah, there might be some very real practical things that you have to change that I have a knowledge of, but also at the heart of it, when you leave here, I'm not going home with you. You have to figure out how to navigate your life after this. And so the more available that person is to partner with, the patient, the client, the situation, whatever it is, the more likely that trust is established, and also that that person is likely to put into play the things that you've suggested. I mean, I've had time and time again, especially in the pediatric world, teens, people often kind of harp on teens of like, maybe they won't listen or do or whatever. But a lot of my teens that came through my door, it was about empowering them to say, I know that you're capable of doing this, regardless of what pressures that you're experiencing. And I just need you to kind of work on this with me. And I believe that you can do it. And sure enough, I've had so many teens come back and say, I did it, or I changed this, and you see visible results, whether it's, with their weight management, or maybe they were pre-diabetic or whatever it was, and just helping them understand that I'm on your side is really that way. It's that motivational interviewing, right? It's that opportunity to motivate you and not tear you down so that you can succeed at whatever the goal is. So for me, whether it's with a patient or whether it's with, coaching a nurse, it's really just about motivating you so that you understand that you can do it too. And, I might be able to leverage some of the resources that I have to get you to where you need to go.
Well, and I think it's funny, like I think you get a lot of honesty from people when you're honest with them, like I
Right.
want to help you and blah, blah, blah. And then you start hearing their whole story. And
Mm-hmm.
it's funny, one of the things I hate is when nurses give me report and they're giving me their whole like opinion on how this patient is, and drives me crazy because I'm like, I'll form my own opinion, okay? So I'll go in there, and by the end of the shift I get more out of the patient than I ever thought I wanted to know. And it's because you talk to them like a human being,
Right.
like they're not a subject or a patient. They are a person that you want to help, and you got to relate to them. And I think that's probably what you did with the teens. That's why they're able to
Yeah.
to relate to you and say, look what I did. Somebody's proud of them. Somebody wants them to
Absolutely.
succeed. It's huge,
Yeah.
huge, especially in that age group.
Oh, absolutely. And I think across the board, I think really when it gets to the heart of it, all of us just want someone to be proud of us, whether it's in,
Yes.
starting a business or doing something new. Like,
Yes.
I don't think that ever goes away. I think that makes the essence of who we are as individuals and people and the human race. And so I think, the more that we're able to do that, whether it's nurses supporting nurses or, nurse entrepreneurs supporting other entrepreneurs or whatever it is, whatever the case may be, being in those different roles, it's being willing to give someone a chance for them to have a proud moment so that they can continue to, do whatever they do and do it to the best of their ability.
So I think the whole episode, all we're trying to say, you guys, is be kind to each other.
Yes, be kind and you can do it and you're awesome. Yeah.
And you're awesome. And we'll help you.
Yeah. That's the theme. That's it. I think we got it.
I love it. So tell me, Antonette, what are 3 things that people don't know about you?
Right.
I always do this with my guests here.
Yeah. So one thing, well, maybe they know now because of my last name, but that I am fluent in Spanish. And a lot of times, especially in my patient populations, when people might have looked at me face value, and then I start speaking to them fluently, they're like, "What?" Instead of listening to anything that I'm telling them, they're like, "But you're speaking to me in Spanish," and I'm like, "Yeah, but I'm telling you how to manage whatever's going on right now."
Their jaws hit the
Yeah,
floor.
so that's always a little bit of a shocker for a lot of people sometimes, but it is what it is, and I love that. I love that opportunity because it just gives me a further connecting point. The second thing I think, which a lot of people are starting to know a little bit more, but if you would have just met me for the first time, you wouldn't know, is that unfortunately I my biological father was killed in a car accident when I was 2. And that was a major mark to the start of my life. And I think it often drives my empathy towards how I relate to people, because you just don't know where people have come from. You don't know what kind of things they've had to deal with. And I have been very blessed in my life to have a very great support family, regardless of this tragedy. You know, I have a father who's been my father all of my life, you know, even if he didn't start off as like my biological father, but has really shaped me and groomed me and molded me. And, you know, people wouldn't know the difference one way or another if they met us. Even now, people are like, I think you look more like your dad. And I'm like,
Right?
yeah, I do, you know, and it's just that kind of power of life circumstances that pull people together. And so I think I'm starting to share that piece of me a little bit more, because I just want to encourage people to not be marked by your circumstances, and knowing that you know, I think a lot of it is what pushes me to be visionary in my approach, because there's so much more to someone than meets the eye. And then that third piece is that, unfortunately, I almost died in childbirth just about a little over a year ago.
Oh my gosh, what
Yeah.
happened?
After the delivery of our second son, I went into, you know, I had this episode of DIC where I just wouldn't stop
Oh my
bleeding,
God.
just kept bleeding and bleeding, and it was very horrific. You know, ended up in the ICU, intubated, and it
Holy
was,
cow.
yeah, it was a really scary moment. But thankfully I came out alive, and I think a lot of it has also propelled me to just say, you know what, if I have life to live, then I better do whatever I was created to do on this earth.
Yep, life is
Because
short. You were told.
life is very short. And so, and I also recognize that nurses, again, were those leaders driving my care, even though a lot of those ICU nurses were like, we don't generally see,
Yeah, scared to death of you.
postpartum nurses
Yep.
down here, but they were so proactive. They used their critical thinking skills. They made sure to like get me extubated faster so I could be reunited, you know, with our child. They made sure that I had all the breastfeeding resources I needed at the bedside of the ICU.
Good.
You know, and just they were amazing. And it just really proved to me that, you know, our profession is doing wonderful things, and that compassion and that empathy and that leadership was very, very real. I mean, I would have preferred to not have to learn it that way, but regardless, I did, and I lived to tell the tale, and I'm just, you know, I'm grateful.
Thank
To be
God.
alive. Yeah, thank
It
God
is
for
scary.
sure.
That's why I tell
Yeah.
these girls that start in our unit, I'm like, listen, things aren't always butterflies and rainbows.
Oh no, they're
We have,
not.
we have a lot going on here, you know, socially for one, and then when things go bad, they go bad fast, because your husband was probably like,
oh yeah,
holding your baby at the first
Yep.
second, and then
Yep.
like, what the heck?
Yep.
And my wife's gonna die.
Yeah, he was the one who had to, you know, and it was a really hard reconciliation point for me of like, oh no, like, you know, because I was the heavy like breastfeeding advocate. I've got to make sure my baby gets breastfed, and
Oh
what's going to
yeah.
happen. And it's like,
Nope.
there was nothing I could do. Like, there was nothing I could do. And so they were just so good about, you know, working with me, and just me being able to just reconciling myself to say, you know what, Antonette, it's going to be okay. Like, your baby's still going to be okay, and you'll be able to do what you need to do when you can.
Yep.
Just and I was so thankful for that. I was so thankful, because there's so many pressures just as a mother, and then also being a healthcare provider and running through every list in my head of what was going to happen. It just, I was very grateful for the support that we received, and just, yeah, that I'm strong and ready to go, and our kid is super busy, and you would have never thought anything about anything. So yeah.
Oh, thank God. Well, thank
Yeah.
God you are here to tell the
Yes,
tale.
I
Holy
am.
cow, that is
Yeah.
so scary. That
Yeah.
is so
Yeah.
scary.
Big time.
Scary on both sides. For the nursing side,
Oh,
it's always
all
very
around,
scary to see that
all
mom
around.
circle the drain. Did
Yeah.
you end up passing out, or were you awake for pretty much the whole time?
So I was awake up to a point, but I felt myself getting very weak. And that's
Yeah.
where everyone, you know, I maybe about an hour in, they were doing that classic fundal massage,
Oh, yes.
which I don't know
Kneading
why
some
we call
bread.
it. I don't know why we call it a fundal massage, because it's not a massage by any means. But about an hour in, it was just like, this is not going well. And they rushed me
Oh,
back to the OR, and you know, I mean, all kinds of things were going on, and it was just like, what are we going to do? And sure enough, I remember blacking out at one point. I don't know if it was because of the anesthesia or because I was just losing a lot of blood. But when I
yeah.
woke up again, thank God, when I woke up again, I was not where I was before. And, but I had a lot of amazing, amazing, kind nurses around me. I still remember them. Alice and Dallas, those two nurses.
Alice and Dallas.
Yeah.
I love it.
They were a godsend. They were so amazing, so right by my side, willing to learn, willing to listen, willing to do what was best, willing to keep my husband included, willing to have,
Oh, wow.
our baby available. The L&D nurses, along the way were supporting my husband, brought our son down in a little isolette so I could see him, and just so many different things. So
Well,
I'm
thank
thankful.
God, all's well that ends well, right?
Oh yes,
Whew.
absolutely,
Ooh, don't want to ever go through that again. That's for sure.
that
Holy cow.
I'm done with that one. So I'm
Wow.
done with that
Wow.
kind of experience. And I
Well,
definitely don't want to have to do that again, ever again. So,
oh my gosh. Tell me where people can find you and find your book. You have an ebook, don't you?
yeah, I do. Yeah. Visionary Nurse, 90 Days of Inspirational Musings on Being Influentially Visionary. It can be found on my website at www.visionarynurse.com. And people can catch me on Twitter at aamontalvo1. I'm also all over LinkedIn, and I love connecting any way possible, as well as our Facebook page of Visionary Nurse, or blog post. So I love people. I love connecting with people. I love kind of, having these opportunities to share my story. And, Jeanine, you're good at what you do. So thank you for also being
As are you.
relatable
As are you.
person. I love it. I love it.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. And you guys go find her on all those social platforms, and we will talk again soon.
Yeah.
Thanks, Antonette, so much.
Thank you.
It's live, my first course. I'm so excited to tell you guys that my first course, Plan, Create, Launch, Land, and Grow Your Health Writing Business, is now live. If you head on over to growthlab.thesavvyscribepodcast.com, it's available to purchase right now. Jump on in. Everybody is saying so many wonderful things, and I can't wait for you to be a part of it.
Welcome to the show, Antonette. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you. I know I've given you a hard task already with a very long last name, so I appreciate it. You did a great job.
And I bet a lot of people are like, Antoinette. Do they say that a lot too?
All the time. I've learned to kind of breeze over it as best as I can.
Yes.
Family members tend to get a little bit more defensive when I don't correct it. So, I find it strategic ways to help people recognize it, but you did great. I think you did phenomenal.
No, thank you. I have the weird name too, Janine. People always want to say like Janie, and then Kalbach. My maiden name was Walsh. That was easy. So that wasn't hard at all. But Kalbach, it's always Kalbach.
Yeah.
So I get it. Been there.
Yeah,
So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. I mean, it's exciting to be a part of your audience, and I appreciate just having this space to kind of share a little bit of my story.
It's so awesome to connect with you. We connected over on Facebook, which was cool. And I was just looking for some more podcast guests, and you totally stuck out to me after talking with Deanna Gillingham. And yeah, I was like, oh my gosh, I have to get her on the show.
Yeah, no, it's cool. And Deanna's been such a huge support in so many different ways. I mean, she has really, for me, set a great platform for nurse entrepreneurs. And so I think it's always a matter of time before us kind of out of the box thinking nurses come together and have conversations and recognize that we're all trying to do something different and unique. So it's just wonderful to kind of finally connect.
Well, and Deanna and I we've known each other for a while now, and she's an amazing support to nurses, to entrepreneurs, to moms, like, cause she doing that stay-at-home mom podcast she's coming out with soon as well. I think it's not officially launched, but unofficially, like, you can go to it on iTunes now, which is cool. Nice. So she's breaking into the podcast world as well. So I think it's cool. I think, like you said, there's a lot, but truly there's not a lot when it's the giant fish in the sea. Yeah. Look at it, that you see all these nurses, you're like, wait, I've seen her name before.
Oh yeah.
I've seen his name before. So it is kind of cool that everybody's starting to hook up a little bit, closer in the podcast world.
No, it really is. And we all kind of wear a lot of different hats. So
It's so true. It's so true. So tell us a little bit what your career path looked like.
Yeah, so I am a pediatric nurse practitioner by trade. Nursing was my second degree, and education was actually my first degree. I went to Emory University and had this kind of passion for health and education going towards my undergraduate career, but I wasn't entirely sure how it was all going to play out. I thought I wanted to be a pediatrician. I loved kids. I loved teaching. And it just seemed like the next best fit. But then when I started undergrad, I recognized that I had this huge love just for really developing the understanding of education and what that entails and how that blends with health and how you can actually put the two together. I had an opportunity to hear about a summer science program, and they highlighted a bunch of different health professionals. And there was a nurse practitioner that spoke at one of these programs. And I thought, that's it. She's doing what I think I want to see myself doing, this holistic care, this education, this community outreach. But I completely stalled on it. And I was like, wait, but I don't know anyone who's a nurse or a nurse practitioner. So, and I've been telling everyone I want to be a pediatrician. So how can I kind of veer off into this other direction? And so I literally went through my 4 years of undergrad, doing all of my pre-med courses, struggling through organic chemistry without like a clear understanding, taking the MCATs and finishing my undergraduate career, just feeling very almost lost in a sense of like, this is not the full story. And so I ended up going abroad because I also had this, huge passion for the Spanish language. And as you can tell from my last name, Montalvo, and wanting to kind of understand how global health impacts healthcare in general. And so ended up living in Central America, primarily Guatemala for about 3 years, and worked with an organization there called Primeros Pasos and the student immersion program called Somos Hermanos. Both of them, one means first steps, which is Primeros Pasos, and Somos Hermanos is we are brothers. And it was really just trying to build cultural competency for healthcare providers to understand, why someone might leave their home country to come and, seek another country for refuge, or finding, how healthcare practices might be different. And it really shaped me. And it was there in Central America where I got my epiphany to be a nurse and a nurse practitioner. And I started meeting all these amazing nurses, while I was hiking these highland mountains in Guatemala, and ultimately ended up applying to the nursing program at Penn, whose slogan at the time was "Dare to Change the World," and loved it. And from there, kind of the rest was history. And I found this world of nursing and then a nurse practitioner, and really enjoyed being able to apply this skill set. But like, I think a lot of nurses, and why we're having this conversation now, after many, many years of kind of practicing clinically and really wanting to see my nursing profession kind of do a little bit more for where I saw the community's needs were, I ended up relocating to rural South Carolina with my husband. Well, he at first was kind of not that open, but then became open and recognized that it was a great purpose and calling, and just saw that I can apply my ability to have this passion for education and community and outreach and all the experience that I've had in nursing in a different way. So we launched a community health initiative called Montalvo International Community Health Initiative. And it was really just a grassroots movement to collaboratively work with other organizations and partners and community members in understanding just how health is more than just your physical health, but it's all the other factors that come into play. Your social determinants of health is the big buzzword within healthcare. So where you live, work, pray and play, how do all of these things impact your health? And as a result of it, and just gaining visibility for the initiative, I started creating this platform for myself where there were a lot of other nurses who were looking and saying, I want to do something like this. I don't want to be in startup or in technology or something different. I'm feeling, burnt out at the bedside, or that I want to do more. Tell me what you're doing to get to this area. And I found myself informally coaching nurses to think innovative about their approach to nursing, and understanding that there's much more to our profession than what meets the eye, and just, I guess, in a lot of ways, retraining nurses as well as the society on nurses as change agents. And so as a result, I started writing down a lot of reflections, learning about business, listening to podcasts. It's how I got a chance to hear the BizChix podcast, because I had not really ventured into the business world by any means. And as a result, just started eating this stuff up and recognized there's much more that I can give to the landscape of healthcare by also coaching other nurses to be visionary in their approach. And so that is how, the foundation of Visionary Nurse started, and publishing an ebook. And I guess talking to you where I'm at right now.
Very cool. And it's a couple points that you said I think are mentionable, is that our career isn't just at bedside. And I think we're all in that education mode. I mean, I think most nurses said, I'd be a nurse or a teacher. That's usually like what I hear. And if I wasn't a nurse, I'd be a teacher. Okay, because that's what we are. Nurses are
Right.
teachers.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
teachers, nothing bad against them. A lot of them are nurses. A lot of them are caregivers. A lot of them care for our children. And I see it like across the board. But that being said, just from my clinical experience in the past of working in Cleveland, you could tell these women that they need to go to the doctor every week because they are, at risk for preterm labor. But good luck. Good luck getting them to the doctor every week. They may not have the means to get there. They may not have childcare. They might have 3 other little kids under the age of 4 that they got to tote to the doctor, and you want them to be there by 8 a.m.
Yeah.
There's a whole everything's wrong with that picture.
Oh yes, very much so.
I feel like not only is social determinants like the buzzword, but a lot of communities are noticing that they need nurses out of the hospital and to help guide these people. And I feel like obviously we're the most trusted profession, right? But I think people trust us because we're relatable and we know,
Right.
what to say and how to say it in a way where we're not judging them. We know how to help them, and give us the tools, give us the way, and we'll be able to show these people what to do. So I think that's awesome what you're doing. I really do. I think that it needs to expand past South Carolina for sure.
Yeah. No, and it's exciting even, just having this platform now because, this is the year of the nurse and midwife. And so I think a lot of us are catching on and recognizing that there has to be more because we want to see people well, we want to see people thrive. And I think a lot of nurses and teachers tend to be very altruistic in their thinking. And we're just trying to find new ways to address that so that, we actually do have healthy societies. So.
Well, and it doesn't even start at the sick bedside person. Like, we need to get these people before they become sick.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's where they really got to look at nurses to say, like, oh, yeah, we do need to do preventative care. And that isn't in the hospital at the bedside.
Right.
So, yeah, definitely. And then for BizChix, I think is awesome. Have you heard Deanna's episode on BizChix?
I have. And I remember listening to it and that's what prompted me to reach out to her. I was watching a ton or listening to a ton of episodes and I was just, soaking it all in. And when I came across and I thought, there's a nurse and she's an entrepreneur and she's doing these great things. And, even in her story, she mentioned she practiced in South Carolina. And I was like, this is a godsend. I have to talk to her. I have to connect with her. And, it's so interesting how these things eventually come around, and got a chance to connect with her and just learn so much. And she was so encouraging. And when I first connected with her, it was probably about a year or two ago when things were still kind of at a lull. It was right before I had our second child and so many different things were going on. And she was just such a voice of great strategy and reason as I was thinking through, what are my next steps? And sure enough, just that extra motivation and knowing that there was another nurse that was out there doing kind of out of the box things was instrumental in thinking through, how I propelled forward, even in, the last couple of years.
And now look at how many people you've met and networked with, it's crazy because you meet one and then we're like, oh, have you met so-and-so? Have you met so-and-so? So yeah,
I love it.
Little link chain there. But yeah, I really enjoyed her episode on there. I was like, oh my gosh, it's like you're famous now, Deanna, because you're on this huge one. I was so proud of her for putting herself out there because it was a coaching call.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So going back to, teaching nurses to be visionary leaders, my question for you is, I think all nurses can be leaders, whether they think they are or not. But a lot of nurses are like, oh, I could never be like a charge nurse because that's just not me. How do you feel that, if you agree with me, are nurses all leaders?
Oh, absolutely. And I think the thing is that, often again, what we've probably learned in a lot of different, mindset thought processes or books or resources, that a lot of it does come from a mindset. Nurses don't realize that they're leading regardless of whether they have a title or not. And I think all nurses are leaders because they are all leading the care of someone wherever and however they're practicing it, right? They are making sure that that person advances to health. Say it's a nurse that's at the bedside. They don't recognize that there's all these kind of micro leader steps that are taking place. And I think a lot of times we might psych ourselves out or trick ourselves into thinking that we're not leading the care of someone, or we're not advancing the care of someone because we don't have the title of charge nurse, or we don't have the title of administrator, or we don't have the title of whatever. And I think a lot of it comes from that shift of saying, it's not about your title, it's just about what you do and who you are. And I think that has been, the basis of even a lot of what my coaching has been about, is just understanding your visionary leadership, understanding that, most nurses come in with a hope and a vision to impact health in some way. And just recognizing that, you do have the vocabulary and the skill set to be a leader, whether it be as a charge nurse or even, leading some other avenue, that you're involved in. But a lot of it is just coming from that mindset shift and perspective of saying, you know what, my leadership can look a lot of different ways. And really that mark of a good leader is not so much the title that you have, but how you carry out, what you're passionate about and what your mission is for the betterment of somebody else.
Well, and being that advocate,
Yes.
for a patient, that's a leader in itself. And,
absolutely.
Putting yourself out there for the physician and, just being there for them, I think is so true. And I think, like, we go back to the education thing, we're all teachers. So you're leading somebody in, their care and their knowledge, and even a coworker, just teaching them as well.
Oh, absolutely.
So going into the visionary side of it, can you give an example of maybe a nurse that you've worked with that has come to you for coaching?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are nurses that approach me, for example, in the RN to NP transition, right? Someone who has maybe been in a registered nurse role for a really long time, and now they are suddenly in this classic understanding of a leader role, right? Where society defines, as nurses, we might receive the order and we deliver it and et cetera. And so now you're in this provider role where you might have to call the shots or make the diagnosis or make the assessment. And what you do is what is going to be kind of the driving care for that patient. And so there are nurses who, again, kind of struggle with that mindset piece of how do I make that transition of understanding that I am the one that has to be confident enough to determine what this diagnosis is or what this assessment is and what this person's care is going to look like. And so a lot of that coaching may come in the understanding of how do you make that transition from nurse to NP? What are some tools and resources that you need to put in place for yourself so that you can be more organized and you can strategically make sure that you keep up with your patient load and whoever that you're attending to? And also, too, how do you leverage support for yourself? As an NP, I've had many NPs say, I'm in this role now, but I'm still doing everything. I'm doing the callbacks and I'm doing the referrals and I'm doing the follow-ups and I'm doing the medication, et cetera, which is important and good practice, but you have to learn how to delegate, right? You have to learn how to be able to take a responsibility that inherently has been comfortable to you and traditional to you, and recognizing that you have to build within a team as well, and making sure that you have that communication. And so a lot of it is going through the understanding of how do I make the transition? How do I have the confidence in myself? What are the resources I need to be more organized? And then also with that, how do I understand how to manage a team or a team of people that I'm working with, that we're all working together to get it done, so that I'm working, like the classic line, smarter and not harder, and not being burnt out at the end of it. And then on the flip side, there are the nurses that come for coaching that are looking for an opportunity to innovatively apply their nursing skill set that might not be traditional to nursing at all. They want to go into business, or they have an idea or a product that they want to put into place. And so really understanding, how do I take what I've learned and what I've known up to this point and being able to apply it in a way that may not look like what nursing has looked like before, but that it's still in the same way trying to advance the health of someone else. So knowing how to network, knowing how to collaborate, knowing how to be an advocate for yourself, not just for someone else, so that ultimately you can be an advocate for someone else, and knowing what resources are out there so that you can, really propel yourself. Nurses, I think we have a hard time marketing ourselves and saying, ooh, look at me and look at what I'm doing. So just understanding how to craft that in a way that's unique to you and doesn't feel very pushy or salesy or aggressive, but still helps people elevate and understand, what you're doing. So those are some of the scopes that I look into.
Yes, and I agree with you. I think that so many nurses are horrible. We're horrible at sales. We don't know what the heck we're doing at all, because we don't ever want to be that person to have to be the, used car salesman and, push our product or whatever, our service on to somebody. But I think I think it comes down like for writers, when I have a conversation with a potential client, it's so much easier for me to use an example of either someone I've talked to in the past and helped
Mm-hmm.
them, and or tell them how I can help their specific company. So you get to know the company and get to know their mission and vision, and say how your writing services can help them grow their business. And it's the same thing if a nurse goes into business, knowing how you can help. Don't think of yourself as, you know, you have to do this and or you won't get success, but
Right.
more like, well, let me help you get to those goals, whatever those goals may be. So I think that's great that you're doing that. And how long have you been coaching nurses to do?
So officially, it will be almost 2 years in April when I
Good.
have kind of launched myself in this formal role. But in many ways, I feel like I've been doing this for much longer.
Sure.
I just didn't give myself a formal title for it and
Or
recognize
credit.
that
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. I had to make my own shift in mindset to say, you know what, I've kind of been doing this for a long time already. I think I need to think about how I can leverage this not only for myself, but really to see, the amazing visions of other nurses and healthcare providers kind of be out there. Because there's so much that so many people are doing. And I think a lot of it is really going to drive the way, healthcare is delivered.
Well, yeah, because there's so many of us. There's so many nurses. Like,
Yeah.
if we could just band together in that kind of thinking, nursing can change and healthcare can change for the better, as
Oh,
we all know it
absolutely.
needs to be. Um, so what are some things that you tell people, or maybe the advice that you've been given when it comes to building a business?
Right. So definitely understanding your vision and your focus, and that's kind of my tagline in a lot of ways. You don't know where you're aiming unless you have a north, right? You're not going to strike out to a new place and just hope you get there and don't even look at a roadmap or a GPS or something. And yeah, technology wise now we just plug it in and GPS will take us where we need to go. But I often think about that. I don't know if you watch The Office, but
Oh yeah.
there's this one episode where, Michael Scott is like just getting into the GPS and he types it in and the GPS is like taking him over into a pond or something. He's like, but the GPS is telling me I need to go there. And he literally drives into a pond, and like doesn't even, and he's
Yep.
still like, why did that happen? And so I think in the same way, when nurses want to strike out into business, like they either kind of just plug in these random coordinates and then maybe get frustrated very quickly why they ended up somewhere where they weren't expecting to go. Or on the flip side, they don't know where they want to go at all. And then also too, end up being frustrated, feeling as if they haven't accomplished some kind of goal. And so my biggest tip is always, what is your vision? What is your north? What is your focus? What do you see yourself doing? Why and how? How do you want your time to be spent? And I think thinking about those questions helps give you some direction, and at least it helps hone you in a little bit more so that you can start really uncovering where you want to go. And then from there, I think it helps pick apart the weeds of maybe I'm interested in a lot of things, but really they all have this underlying theme of, fill in the blank. And once I can really get to the root of that underlying theme, then I can start be moving forward, more strategically and just figuring out how to organize thoughts. I mean, again, as nurses, we are very good about carrying out a lot of different tasks, but, many times people say you're a jack of all trades and a master of none. So how can I master what my underlying theme is or why I always do what I do? Maybe for you, it's like,
Sure.
it's all about writing. It's all about communicating. It's all about expressing yourself. And so finding that theme and really, capitalizing on that strength.
Agreed. And I think another big thing is to make sure that idea is profitable,
Yes.
because you might really, really enjoy it, but there might not be a market for it, or there might not be uh, some income stream to be able to build a business out of it.
Right.
For sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's just thinking through, timing. Everything, timing is of the essence. And so it's just knowing where to table something, where to pull something in, how to reshift your focus, how to revamp it so that, maybe you do get to where you need to go. It just might look a little bit differently than what you thought in the beginning.
Of course. So, how do you tell people to start building themselves up like a skill set to become a leader, whether that's in clinical or that's in business?
I think a lot of it is just being willing to get outside of your comfort zone and step into roles that you may have never done before. Like
Yeah,
it really is like you just have to branch out.
jump
You
in.
have to be, yeah, you have to jump in. You have to be willing to learn something different. You're not some people, yeah, it might come intuitively, but there's some things that you really do have to learn. And so for me, I thought a health initiative was just about going out and helping people. And maybe I have a few conversations and we'll figure it out. But what I recognize is that to start anything, you have to have some kind of foundation of, how does the area operate? What are the major, who are the major stakeholders, and, what are the key things and people that you have to connect with? Understanding how to even operate if this initiative becomes something else. What kind of structure needs to be put into place? All of these things are questions that I had to ask myself. And so a lot of it is just jumping into uncomfortable roles. If I want to know strategically how the health system operates in my area, I have to be willing to just schedule a meeting with the CEO and hoping, that they are willing to have, 10 to 15 minutes of a conversation. I think for nurses in building leadership, it's being willing to jump into a role, whether it be volunteer within their workplace, that may be completely different than what they are doing currently. And so I think that's a first step. And then also too, just understanding, who is doing what you hope to do and learning from them as well, whether it be through a podcast or a blog or an article or just reading in the library, any book about business. That was something that I really made sure I did, firsthand. It's just, you have to be willing to learn and understand and see what other people are doing, and then be willing to interface with those people so that you can build up your own kind of confidence. So I think in a lot of ways, leadership is like a muscle, and, as nursing is a kind of way, like you have to work your muscle. You have to be willing to break down in order to build, right? And so I think in a lot of ways, yeah, things might come intuitively, but the more that you exercise that muscle, the more that you put yourself in those roles or have those conversations or learn about those things, the more likely you are to actually strike out when, your administrator may come to you and say, hey, we need someone to fill an XYZ role. You're going to jump in and say, I'm going to do it, instead of always complaining that no one ever does anything about the thing that you're complaining about.
That's
right?
a wrap for today's episode of The Savvy Scribe. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, we'd love for you to subscribe and leave a review on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. Until next time.